At every gathering, my father-in-law asked, "So when are you having kids?" I finally said, "When you start asking about our happiness instead of our timeline." My husband clapped. I'm not the kind of person who likes to stir up drama. I stay in my lane. I've always believed that people can only push you if you let them. But this was different. It wasn't one push. It was years of them. And it came from the same damn person every time. My father-in-law, George. George is the kind of man who thinks he's always right. He talks more than he listens. He's got two volumes, loud and louder. Old school, opinionated, the kind of guy who thinks being blunt is the same thing as being honest. He likes to say things like, "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," as if that gives him a pass to be rude. Matt, my husband, warned me early on that his dad was a little intense. That was an understatement. From the day we got married, George made it clear what he expected from us. Babies. Fast. It wasn't even subtle. At our wedding reception, right after our first dance, he came up to me, held my hands, and said with a wink, "Can't wait to meet the first grandkid." I laughed it off then. I thought it was sweet, if a little old-fashioned. But it never stopped. Every holiday, every dinner, every birthday. "So when are we getting some grandkids?" Clock's ticking. What's the hold-up? Like he was ordering something off a menu, and we were just being lazy about it. The thing is, we tried. We really did. Right after our first anniversary, we decided to start trying. It was exciting at first. We bought baby books, picked out names, even painted the guest room a soft gray, thinking maybe we'd turn it into a nursery soon. Then I had my first miscarriage. It was early. 8 weeks. Just enough time to start dreaming. I didn't tell anyone except Matt. I didn't want the questions, the pity. I thought we'd try again and it would all work out. We waited 6 months, tried again. Same thing. Another loss. After that, I couldn't look at that gray room without feeling sick. Matt was my rock. He never blamed me. Never pushed. But his family? They didn't know any of this. Because we didn't tell them. We didn't know them that. George kept asking. He never once asked how I was. Never asked if we were happy, if we were struggling, if there was something going on he should know. Just, "When are you giving us grandkids?" Like it was our duty. I kept smiling, laughing it off. Someday. We're thinking about it. Maybe next year. But every time, it chipped away at me. And Matt saw it. He'd squeeze my hand under the table or change the subject. He tried to protect me. But we both knew George wouldn't stop. Then came the night everything changed. It was Matt's mom's birthday. She turned 65 and wanted a big dinner with the whole family. We booked a private room at this nice Italian place in downtown Asheville. There were 20 of us. His parents, his siblings, their spouses, cousins, aunts, even some neighbors. I had a feeling it was going to happen. I even told Matt on the way there, "If your dad says one thing tonight, I'm not going to stay quiet." He looked at me and just said, "Do what you need to do." Dinner started fine. Drinks, appetizers, lots of small talk. George was loud as always, telling some story about how back in his day you didn't wait to have kids, you just did it. Then it happened. We were halfway through dinner when he turned to me, wine glass in hand, and said, "So, Brooke, any baby news yet? You two aren't getting any younger." The table went silent. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I felt the blood rush to my face, but I kept my voice calm. I said, "When you start asking about our happiness instead of our timeline, maybe then you'll get an answer." The silence that followed was deep. Heavy. Matt didn't say a word. Then he clapped. One sharp, loud clap. Finally, he said, "Thank you." George looked stunned. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked around the table like he couldn't believe what just happened. I could see Matt's brother lean back in his chair, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. His sister looked down at her plate. No one jumped in to defend George. Then Matt added, "You've been crossing the line for years, Dad. Maybe it's time you listened for once." That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because after that night, George decided to make it personal. He started calling Matt more, making comments about me, saying I was controlling him, that I was barren. Yes, he actually used that word. It got worse when we stopped going to family events. George told people we were going off the rails, that we hated kids. He made us the villains. Matt's sister texted me and said, "You know he's telling people you're anti-family now, right?" And that's when I knew. I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. He wanted a fight? Fine. But he had no idea what kind of fight I was capable of. Let me tell you what I did next. After that dinner, I thought maybe George would back off. Maybe the embarrassment would make him think twice. But I gave him too much credit. A week later, Matt got a call from his Uncle Dave. They're not super close, but they talk now and then. Dave told Matt that George had been telling people I shamed him in public, that I was disrespectful, and that I was trying to isolate Matt from his own family. Then came the kicker. George had started telling people that Matt was having second thoughts about our marriage, that he was trapped. That set something off in me I didn't know I had. I told Matt, he wants war? He's got it. Matt didn't try to stop me. He was tired too. Tired of cleaning up after his dad. Tired of pretending it didn't hurt. Tired of shielding me when he was barely holding it together himself. So, I made a decision. If George wanted to play dirty, I'd do it cleaner. But harder. I started collecting things. Little things. I went through old texts, old voicemails, even emails. George had left a trail of rudeness going back years. There was the time he called Matt's sister's husband a waste of space in a group email because he didn't want kids either. Or the voicemail he left after our second miscarriage, he didn't know we had just lost the baby, where he said, maybe Brooke just doesn't have the mother gene. I saved it all. Then I started talking. I called Matt's sister, Kayla. She's the only one in the family who never fully kissed George's ass. She and her husband have 2 kids, but they've always done things on their terms. I told her everything. At first, she was shocked. Then she started sharing too. Turns out George had been just as awful to her husband, Dave. Told him he was too soft. Accused him of letting Kayla wear the pants. She said she stopped telling George things because he always turned it into a lecture. Next, I talked to Matt's cousin Sarah. Same story. George had made her cry at Christmas 2 years ago by asking why she wasn't helping her husband grow the family tree. This wasn't just a me problem. George was the problem. So we got smart. We started a group chat. Family Reality Club, Kayla called it. Every time George said or did something messed up, we documented it. Shared it. Talked about how he'd treated each of us for years like we owed him something. Then Kayla dropped a bomb. Did you guys know about the thing with the money? What money? I asked. She told me that a few years ago, after their grandmother died, there was a small inheritance that was supposed to be split evenly between George and his sister. But George convinced their aunt to sign over her share to him, just for the short term, he said, so he could invest it for the family. She never saw that money again. And she wasn't the only one. George had been pulling small financial moves on people in the family for years. Borrowing money, promising to pay it back, and then acting like it never happened. Using guilt, pride, shame, whatever it took to keep people from speaking up. That changed everything. Because now it wasn't just about the kid comments. This was about who George really was. A manipulator. A bully. Someone who got away with it because no one wanted to cause waves. But the waves were already here. And I was done being quiet. Matt and I started planning. We weren't going to scream or curse or throw things. No. We were going to make sure everyone saw George for who he really was. And the best place to do that? The upcoming family reunion. George loved the reunion. It was his stage. He used it to show off, to control the conversation, to give his big family legacy speech. Every single year. This time, we were taking the mic from him. The family reunion was scheduled for mid-July at a rented lodge in the Smoky Mountains. George had booked it months in advance. It was one of the only things he planned with any real effort. He printed little schedules, name tags, even made sure there was a podium for his yearly State of the Family speech. It was disgusting, honestly, how much he loved being the center of it all. He wore his title like a crown. Family patriarch, he called himself. Like he was running some empire instead of just bullying people into submission. But this year we were ready. Kayla and I put together what we started calling the file. It was a neatly organized folder, digital and hard copy, with emails, texts, voicemails, written accounts from 5 different relatives, even screenshots of George making fun of his own wife in group chats. We made copies and gave them to everyone who had ever been targeted by him. The plan wasn't to ruin the reunion. It was to end the cycle. On the second night, right after dinner, George tapped his glass with a spoon like he always did. Everyone groaned quietly. Same speech, different year. I could see the younger cousins rolling their eyes. Before dessert, I'd like to say a few words, he announced, holding his wine glass like a preacher holds a Bible. He stood by the fireplace, started his usual spiel about family values, hard work, honor, and legacy. That's when Matt stood up. He walked to the front, past George, and held up a folder. "Actually, Dad," he said, "I think it's time we talk about something else." George froze. "Matthew, what are you doing?" Matt looked calm, but his hand was shaking a little. I knew this was hard for him. We've all let you talk for years. And it's always about what you want. What you expect. But tonight, we're going to talk about what we want. There was a long silence. Then Kayla stepped up next to him. Then Sarah. Then Uncle Dave. George looked like he was surrounded. Because he was. "We want honesty," Matt said. "We want to stop pretending that everything you say and do is okay. Because it's not." Then he opened the folder and started reading. One by one. Short statements. Things George had said. Done. The money. The comments. The manipulation. People gasped. A few left the room. George kept interrupting, saying things like, "That's not true," or "I was joking," or "This is taken out of context." But no one was buying it anymore. The final straw? The voicemail. The one he left right after my miscarriage. I played it from my phone. Maybe Brooke just doesn't have the mother gene. You could feel the temperature drop. Even his wife covered her mouth. A few of the cousins were crying. Matt didn't scream. He just looked at his dad and said, "You hurt people. For years. And we let you. But not anymore." Then, one by one, people started walking out. George didn't get to finish his speech. He didn't get dessert. And he sure as hell didn't feel like a patriarch anymore. But this wasn't over. Because George? He didn't take humiliation quietly. And what he did next almost blew up everything we built. George didn't speak to anyone for a full week after the reunion. Not a word. Not a text. Nothing. But then he started his revenge. He sent out a mass email to the whole family, titled "The Truth." It was a 7-page rant full of twisted versions of what happened at the reunion. He called me vindictive, said Matt was brainwashed, claimed we were poisoning the family from the inside. He attached photos of Matt and me on vacation, implying we were selfish, spending money on ourselves instead of trying for kids. He even included private details, things he must have overheard over the years, like the time I went to therapy for depression after my second miscarriage. I read it all and felt sick. This wasn't just revenge. This was character assassination. Matt was furious. "I don't care what he says about me," he said. "But this? This crosses every damn line." We didn't respond to the email, but others did. His sister Kayla sent a reply all with one line, "Dad, you should be ashamed." His cousin Sarah followed with, "You just proved everything we said was true." Even Matt's mom didn't defend him. She sent a separate message, privately, to me, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know he could be this cruel." But George wasn't done. He called Matt's boss. He found out where I worked and called my office, telling HR I was mentally unstable and hostile. That was the moment I lost it. I drove to his house. Alone. I didn't tell Matt. I needed to face him myself. He opened the door and smirked when he saw me. Finally here to apologize? I walked right past him. Don't talk, I said. Just listen. He followed me into the living room, arms crossed. I've lost babies. You mocked that. I've kept your secrets. You twisted that. I let you bully me for years, and when I finally stood up, you tried to destroy me. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You're not a father. You're not a patriarch. You're a lonely old man who's scared to admit no one wants to be like you. I handed him an envelope. What's this? He asked. Proof, I said, of every person you've borrowed from and never paid back. Every lie, every voice message, every text, every time you crossed the line. He looked pale. I'm not giving this to the family, I said. I'm giving it to your lawyer. He blinked. What lawyer? The one Kayla hired last week. We're filing a civil case. Fraud, emotional distress, defamation. You're bluffing. I looked him dead in the eye. Try me. I walked out and didn't look back. A month later, we did file. It didn't go to court. George settled. Quietly. He paid back every cent he owed. Issued written apologies to 4 family members, including me. He didn't come to Thanksgiving. No one asked about him. Matt and I were not perfect. I let that man walk all over me for years. I didn't speak up when I should have. I avoided hard conversations. That's on me. But now, I sleep at night. We still don't have kids. Maybe we never will. But we've got peace. We've got each other. And we've got a family, what's left of it, that finally knows what love looks like when it's not being controlled. And George? He's alone. Exactly the way he treated the rest of us for years.